also had time to whip out all my supplies and finally get started on my Crazy Quilt stocking. So in the end, this is where we're at. This is what it's looking like right now. I am having a super fun time, very happy with the progress. And then a couple of double show days later on in the run gave me some time in between shows to finally work on my knitting some more. Hello and welcome back to episode 8 of this year's Vlogmas. If you're new here and you're not familiar, I am Shannon Makes, fiber artist by day, circus artist by night, and in this little series I'm sort of taking you with me as I travel around the US with a touring Christmas show and filling all of my down moments with a wide variety of crafts. If you'd like to get caught up on all of the previous episodes, they will be linked in all of the usual places, up here, down there, all that good stuff. If you're not new here, then you will be kind of aware that I've settled into a sort of format for these episodes where I mainly highlight one city per episode. But I'm gonna shake it up a little bit for this one because we've entered a phase of our tour where it's become more of a whirlwind, mad dash through all the various cities, basically only spending one day per city. So instead of highlighting one city for the whole episode, instead I'm going to sort of cherry pick some fun moments from the past week, whether that is a specific city, something that happened in the show, or the crafting that I got done while on tour. So with that being said, let's pick up right where we left off last episode, and that's going to be with the very last show of our run back in Detroit. Detroit packed up and loaded out, we then headed to Wabash, Indiana, where there wasn't a whole lot happening, but definitely the highlight of that city was watching some of our castmates experience real life snow for the first time. I'm so happy for you.
I've never seen snow.
I've never seen snow.
Like, wait to see. That was falling snow. You haven't seen snow on the ground.
Oh my god,
we gotta be there for the first snowman.
No, but I was trying to record it and you can't see the snow. Like, it doesn't show it in the video. Like, you can't tell. Look.
Now, if the snow made it start to feel a little bit like Christmas, that feeling was absolutely reinforced the next time we got on the bus to discover that Wendy, our bus driver for the duration of this tour, had completely decked it out in festive lights and trim. The next city was also a pretty sleepy town with a very small hotel, which fortunately just meant I had a lot of time left to do some crafting. Not only did I finally get around to washing my fabric for the gingham apron, but I also had time to whip out all my supplies and finally get started on my Crazy Quilt stocking. Now, if you've seen my first Crazy Quilt video, the one where I made this bag right here, you'll know that I basically just raided my scrap drawer for leftovers from previous projects. And if you've watched the very first Vlogmas episode, you'll know that for the Christmas colored edition, I'm mainly using thrifted materials like napkins and tablecloths and supplementing them with a couple small packs of purchased fabric. And I did discover that working with fresh, new pieces of fabric made it surprisingly difficult to get started. I felt a little bit bad to cut into the fabric. I couldn't decide on what shape I wanted anything to be. Basically, I actually missed the limitations of working with small scraps of fabric. So in the end, this is where we're at. This is what it's looking like right now. Obviously, it is not fully done, but I am very happy with how it's turned out. So most of the fabric is basted down, except that I will need something here. I'm thinking something kind of like a little bit of a sock. And I'm also thinking that I want to do some sort of big embroidery pattern here, but again, I'm not sure what. I have since grabbed a couple new pieces of fabric at a Goodwill, and I think one of them is gonna go right here, and I might add another one here. Not entirely sure, but I am having a super fun time, very happy with the progress. So first of all, up at the top, we've got this cute little trim that's just a little scrap, and I'm kind of using it to mimic that white fur cuff here. Then we've got the red linen with that fun hemming job there. Basic. This is, as I said before, the sequins from the show, and I did also incorporate some rickrack here. And then this also in the corner here is a little bit of red velvet from the show. Again, got a very fun embroidery pattern that I'm quite happy with. Then back here, remember this was the placemat that had the festive little motif on it, so I cut out just this section so far. And then at the bottom, we've got our chubby little snowman held down with some T-Rex feet. So it's looking quite good. I'm very happy with it. It has been stalled out for a couple days now, simply because I want to add in the fabric here, and then I can kind of get back to it. But so far it's looking quite good. It is looking a little bit geometric. Like I said, I was really struggling with not having scraps. I find it much easier to work with the scraps, and now that I don't have the scraps, I'm faced with too many decisions. So I will try and get some more work done on this tomorrow. The hotel here has a very cute little sitting area. I might try and get some work done, and also try to figure out what's gonna go in this big patch here. I would maybe be tempted to put some buttons and beads, but I don't have my buttons and beads with me on tour, so we're gonna see. But this is all I've got done for the moment, but I'm still very happy with the way it's turning out. So for those of you who are also working on some sort of crazy quilted project, I know some of you mentioned you had stockings going. Let me know how they are going. Are you also having a little bit of a tough time with certain parts of your project? Is it going swimmingly? Are you worried you're not going to have it done in time for the 25th? So let me know about that. And in the meantime, let's head on to the next city of the tour. So we rode our Christmas bus to Fort Wayne for a quick show, where the highlight might have been Carol Lombard supervising our dressing room. It's a video, so you can pedal.
Ow. Ow. It's a 2D bicycle in a 3D butt crack.
While nothing particularly eventful happened to us, the artists, the backstage portion of the theater was so small that the crew had a extra long and challenging load-in, which involved the wardrobe cases needing to be lowered into the basement through a trap door. Now, speaking of wardrobe, I got a lot of comments on my previous episode of Vlogmas, the one with the wardrobe malfunction, and they were wondering why I couldn't just go out and buy another pair of leggings for the show instead of trying to sew myself a pair in less than ideal situations. And to those of you who made those suggestions, I do really appreciate that you're trying to be helpful, and I think that's amazing. But I would also recommend that you go check out this video right here. It's the one that I made right before I started the Vlogmas series, my Christmas costuming chaos video. Not only because it's just a good video, but also because I do go into a fair amount of detail in that video about circus costumes and the requirements that go into making them, because these are not just costumes for theater where you have to consider things like aesthetics and maybe quick changes, but also you have to consider the tricks that we will be performing in them, and that there's actually a fairly lengthy list of requirements that pretty much all of our costumes have to keep us safe so that we can perform night after night and, you know, not have wardrobe malfunctions, not have the costumes impede the way that we do our tricks. So would recommend starting with that video there. I do talk a tiny bit about the pants, but I also go into how something as simple as just a vest actually has construction restraints and requirements to make sure that we can do our routines safely and soundly every night and still fit with the aesthetic of the show. So in short, to summarize, no, I can't just run to Target and buy a pair of leggings. The pants actually have more requirements for our safety than the vest that I made, and the closest thing that I could buy that would be commercially available would be a pair of jeans that were stretchy but not too stretchy. Like, that's what I use for training, and already that's kind of a little bit tricky to find, but also they're gonna look like a pair of jeans, and they would also even require additional modifications to them. So it would already be a lot of work and it would still just look like a pair of jeans, which really would not fit with the aesthetic of the show, as I think you can imagine if you've been watching the clips of the show. The next city of note was Green Bay, but unfortunately we were on a really tight timeline for this city, so I had exactly 0 moments of free time to go look around the city, which was a shame, but fortunately we were staying in this gorgeous historic hotel that was absolutely stunning, especially the lobby, so I didn't feel the need to go out and look at anywhere else in the town, and the hotel staff were gracious enough to not mind that I was walking around filming everything. Built in 1924, the hotel is on the State Register of Historic Places, and looking around, it's easy to see why. Away teams playing against the Packers would stay here up through the 70s, and the receptionist told me that the Packers themselves would stay here back when they were known as the Acme Packers. I am absolutely obsessed with these floors, and I took so many photos of them, and then I started thinking that it would probably be possible to replicate this pattern or a very similar version of it in knitting, do some color work to kind of replicate that, and then I was thinking, how cool would it be to have a scarf or something similar inspired by the floor of the lobby of this historic hotel from my tour. One of the coolest features of the lobby, besides the floor, was the old system for storing and sorting the hotel keys back when the keys were actual keys, and I commented on it through the receptionist asking if I could take a couple pictures of it, and she actually let me look at and examine some of the original keys because they still do apparently have, not all, but a lot of the original keys to the rooms, and we chatted back and forth with some of the history of the building. That's where she told me a lot of the facts that I then just told you, and I have to say overall it was a very refreshing change from the hotel back in West Palm Beach where I got in trouble for talking about my knitting on camera. The next cities passed in a bit of a blur, although I did have the time to meet up with a few viewers, collected some fabric for my community patchwork project from this video, and then a couple of double show days later on in the run gave me some time in between shows to finally work on my knitting some more. So this is where I'm at in the knitting. I have officially finished the back panel, and I've also basically run out of yarn. So I am done with this project for the moment. I can happily report that my roommate back in Montreal kindly was able to run to the same yarn store and get more of this yarn, so I have a bunch of skeins of it waiting for me back in Montreal so that I can then tackle the front and the sleeves and get this all sewn up. But for the moment, I'm super happy with how it turned out. As you can see, I still have, this is how much I have left of the second skein of that color. But yeah, so here it is. First of all, look at how stretchy it is. If I go to the bottom. Ooh. I do know that I had a lot of comments on various episodes of this telling me, oh, but you needed to make a swatch. You should have made a swatch. And first of all, I kind of went over why I chose this project to begin with, this particular pattern. It was because I did not need to do a swatch, because I knew that if I made it up with the correct yarn on the correct size needles, it would be the correct size. And while some of you did comment that, you know, different people knit with different tensions, and that is very true, my gauge is probably not going to be exactly the same as the pattern designer's gauge, but this pattern, another reason I chose it is because it's very flexible. This one size pattern, this exact thing with no modifications, is meant to fit busts from 32 to 42 inches, I think, something like that. It's about a 10-inch range, because look at how stretchy that is. So that's why I chose it. I'm very happy with how it turned out, and yeah, I'm really loving the two colors together. It's looking pretty good, although I do think that blocking it out is going to make it look even better, just kind of help even all the tension out. So I am looking forward to getting back to Montreal, and oh, we're losing the sun. Time out. But yeah, I am looking forward to getting back to Montreal and blocking this out to see how much that kind of helps to even all the tension out. Yeah, happy with the color combinations, happy with the pattern, very happy with how the cables turned out. Maybe if we turn it to the good side. Yeah, there we go. So that's a very fun pattern. Those of you who have been asking me about this pattern and how to get it, you have to message the pattern maker on Instagram. She doesn't have a website, so this is her handle again. You can message her and ask for the Aurora pattern. It's this pattern right here. It was very affordable. I enjoyed it, and I think it's a very fun knit if you're looking for something that's kind of simple and repetitive. So if you're the kind of person who gets really bored by a repetitive pattern, this one might not be the one for you, but for me it was absolutely perfect, because I'm looking for something that I can do while I'm tired, while I'm on the bus, while I'm watching, you know, an episode of TV in the bed of the hotel at night, and I don't have to focus too much on what the pattern is. So because it's a simple ribbed knit, it's just like knit 3 purl 4 or knit 4 purl 3, with very few exceptions like the cable section at the bottom, which does admittedly require a little bit more focus. It's really great for not taxing your brain too much. And I do generally like to have a couple knitting projects going at a time when I'm not filming them for YouTube, because it's always harder to have multiple projects and multiple footages bouncing around. It's much harder to get the video together. But when I'm just knitting for myself, I do like to have a couple projects going, and like one that's a little bit more simple that I can do when I want to watch something in the background, and one that's a little bit harder where I kind of need to focus on it and like do a pattern. So this is a really great candidate for that simpler option, or if you're a beginning knitter, especially if you're wanting to get into vintage knits where the instructions are known to be a little bit questionable and to assume that you have a lot of prior knowledge about knitting. This one is gives you a vintage result, but it's written with modern instructions. So the instructions are a bit more thorough. They assume that you have less knowledge of knitting, and they kind of hold your hand a little bit more through the whole pattern. So that's where we're at, and I am really happy about it and excited to move on to the next project, which is probably going to be a little bit more complicated. It's probably going to be this one right here, which I'm going to do up with some Cascades Japanese maple colored wool, because I have a bunch of that. Again, there is a monthly vlog for my Patreons where I talk about this yarn and how I got it for a steal. So that's probably what I'll be doing up next on my needles. Either that, or I found a really cute little vintage headband style pattern that I'll throw right there. Might do that one up. Can probably do it with some of the Cascades yarn I have in my luggage right here. So we'll see how much time I have at the end of the tour, and maybe I'll get to that after Christmas, after I've finished my stockings and all the other sewing. So if that felt like a little bit of a whirlwind episode to you, trust me, it felt the same to me as I was living it, but I tried my best to kind of put it together into a cohesive storyline for you, and I hope that you really enjoyed it. Fortunately, I think in the next couple episodes will be a little bit more stable because we spent a bit more time in Dayton. We'll be spending some more time in Michigan, so we'll be a little bit more stable. Hopefully can return to something more resembling the previous episodes. And yes, that was it. I was also looking at the calendar, and there is supposed to be an episode that comes out on Christmas Day, but I'm not actually sure if I'm going to put out an episode then because people will be very busy. Christmas is notoriously a busy day for everybody, so I don't think I'll put out a full episode, but I might put out a very short little episode because there is kind of a funny Christmas gift exchange story that has already halfway set itself up, and the conclusion will be revealed on Christmas Day when I give the gift. So maybe I can tell you all that short little, just do a fun short little holiday gift exchange story for you that's going to make everyone giggle because it's very funny and very heartwarming. And then perhaps, you know, do a wrap-up episode after Christmas so you can see where everything finished. Hopefully I can get more than just the sweater finished. So that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye!